So the framing of today, and the reason why I have Julie here, I'm so glad she said yes, is I believe we are witnessing a Cold War within the Democratic Party. No one's admitting it, but I'm calling it, right? Everyone's outwardly saying the right thing and they're performing. But if you've been paying attention, folks, people realize there's a vacancy and people are jockeying for leadership, and not just leadership, but what does the Democratic Party mean? What's the soul of a party? What is the meaning to be a Democrat? Should be progressive, should be centrist. And that's why I have Julie here. And I want to break down 5 topics, right? And the first one I have is David Hogg versus James Carville. Julie, how would you summarize this for those who don't know why this is so important to figure out the future of the Democratic Party?
Well, it's interesting. And thanks for having me, because I think this is like the the most meaningful thing that we could be possibly talking about right now, because we will not defeat these people and we will not build the Democratic Party that we need to build until we actually reckon with what's going on right now in the Democratic Party. And a lot of the fact is that our leaders are not living up to the task. Now, I am pretty old. The first campaign I ever did was 1996, so I've been at this for 30 years. I come from the James Carville wing of the Democratic Party. And I'm telling you right now that it's time for people like James Carville to take a seat. And it's not to say
Mm.
that it's not to say that he's not a smart guy, and it's not to say that I agree with David Hogg that he needs to use this position of the DNC to primary Democrats. Because if you're working at the DNC, you have to be neutral. So that part I don't agree with. But the larger issue of the fact that we've had the same boomers running the Democratic Party, either in the consultant class like me, I'm not a boomer, thank God, but I'm close, I'm a Gen Xer, or boomers like Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi, or people who are not necessarily boomers like Hakeem Jeffries, but certainly have come under their auspices running the Democratic Party. They're not doing the job.
Yeah.
They're not risk takers. They don't know how to communicate. They get too in the weeds on policy, and this shit is not working. It just hasn't been working for us. They can't capture the imagination of voters who are not tuning in to listen to your 27-point plan on whether we need Medicare for all or whether we need to do this more marginal increase in tax rates. Like, that's not what people are looking for.
24 points. You lost me at 24 points. If you do
Well,
23, I could be
yeah,
with
you
you.
know what? Even 4 points, like nobody wants to hear it. Like, we know what we want to hear, and we want to hear that we have the fight in us to take it to Donald Trump and to get
That's
our
right.
democracy back. It's not rocket science. And yet, you have Chuck Schumer writing an 8-point letter. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said 24. I apologize, Mr. Leader. It was only 8, right? An 8-point plan to Donald Trump saying, I have 8 very stern questions about what you're doing with respect to Harvard University. Yeah, I'm sure he's sitting there with his number 2 pencil in the Oval Office trying to fill in, religiously trying to figure out how to respond to that, right? Of course he's not. So why are we talking about this stuff the way we used to talk about this stuff when I was coming up in the 90s, when those days are over? You've got to communicate with people in 160 characters or less, or capture their imagination, or do something that breaks through the noise. And you're not going to do that by writing sternly worded letters, or like what James Carville said, which is just sit back and
Play
let
possum.
Donald Trump play possum. You don't play possum. You kill the guy. You strangle him in his crib when he's screwing himself. You help push him over the edge. You don't play possum. You beat him when he's down until he can't get.
Figuratively, right-wing media. I know you're going to use this clip and make it go viral. She's being figurative. She
No, you
doesn't.
know what? I am being figurative, but you know what? As figurative as Donald Trump is when he's telling people to go after journalists
Mm.
at his rallies, he's just kidding. I am too. But the reality is, I am being figurative, but I do want to say that when somebody is down, you make sure they don't get up. And that's not accomplished by playing possum. It's just not.
And I appreciate you saying that, Julie, because you laid your cards on the table. You're part of the Democratic establishment. I'm not saying that as a pejorative. You were a strategist.
Yeah.
In the late '90s, Carville, right? I was talking to Adam Parkhamenko, who also was a strategist. 2016, Hillary Clinton. I had him on last week. He said the same thing. Look, I grew up. I made my bones with Clinton, and I'm the one saying that Democratic Party needs to be rebooted and updated.
Yeah.
We need fighters, right? I think that's the key thing, a fighting spirit. What people want is to see someone willing to take on a fascist, someone willing to take on the bully, someone willing to stand up for the marginalized, the poor, the worker, the oppressed, women, Muslims, immigrants, Jews, LGBTQ. And the analogy I give, as I love sports, is the playoffs right now. Thank you for those who are joining. My team is tomorrow, the Warriors. Warriors, let's go, even though they're the underdogs, is even if the team loses. I'll give you an example. Warriors game 7 yesterday versus Houston. I said, you know what? Even if my Warriors lose, I just want them to fight. I just want them to fight. And if they fight, you know what? Respect, old aging team, they did their best, but they won. You want fighters, right? Especially right now. And what Schumer did is Schumer plays with that old school politics. I'll go drink gin with them. I'll slap them on the back. I'll shake hands with them. They know me. I know them. And did a 180, folks, and completely threw the Democrats under the bus and went ahead and gave Donald Trump and Republicans this win, right? Gave them that budget pass, that budget resolution, right? And then the Republicans are like, all right, thank you. We're going to go cut this, and this. So I think when Schumer made that type of Faustian bargain, he thought, okay, I know this party. This party will have my back. I'm a leader. And I think he was taken aback. And I think a lot of the donors and old school, I'm not using old as a pejorative, that old type of thinking, Julie, was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. The sentiment is shifting. Whoa, what happened here? It reminds me of 2012 and what happened to the Republican Party, where the Republicans were like, all right, this is the establishment. This is Eric Cantor. We told you who the leaders are. We're going to give you the talking points and you're going to follow us. And can you remind people what happened in 2012 with Eric Cantor?
Well, exactly. Great analogy. Eric Cantor, of course, was going to be the next speaker. Eric Cantor of Virginia was going to be the guy who was going to succeed John Boehner, and he was going to bring the Republican Party and usher them into an even new more golden age than they were in before. Eric Cantor got primaried by a guy that nobody thought was going to ever have the possibility of winning. But this was the Tea Party, and it was the beginning of the Tea Party stage. I think it was even earlier than 2012. Wasn't it like 2010, I think even?
I think so. Yeah, 2010.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Tea Party was ascendant, and Eric Cantor lost, and it was a massive shock. And John Boehner went away, and then Paul Ryan became speaker because he understood which way the wind was blowing, and then Paul Ryan went away because they got too wacky for him. And what I'm telling
Kevin
you,
Johnson went away.
all of them, right? Like all of them. And now, look, who are we left with, right? Kevin McCarthy wasn't wacko enough for them. Now we've got Mike Johnson, who's, of course, little mini Donald Trump. But the problem here is that the Republican Party missed what was going on in the grassroots. And I'm not suggesting that the Democratic grassroots are as insane as the Tea Party, because, of course, they're not. But what they are is angry. And what they are is motivated.
That's right.
And they are angry and motivated in a way that people who've spent 30, 40, 50 years working on Capitol Hill, wearing little congressional buttons and riding in their members-only elevators and eating in the Senate dining room are not, because to them, nothing's really changed. They're still senators. They still go and debate. They still put in, they do their reconciliation bills, the same structure all the time. You cannot spend that much time in Washington, especially as a senator, and have any kind of appreciation for the pain and the anger and the fight that your party grassroots is demanding at a time like this. This is an existential crisis for our party, the same way that Barack Obama was an existential crisis in the minds of many Republicans. And that led to the Tea Party on their side. And what this is going to lead to is our equivalent of, I don't know what's going to happen, whether call it what you will, the Tea Party, not the Tea Party, but whatever it is, you are going to see people losing their elections in 2026 who never thought they had anything to worry about because they missed this moment. They're not meeting this moment. And that very well could be Chuck Schumer, right?
I think it is. I think it is. Yeah, because look, I've said this for a while now. I said this with Mehdi Hassan for a while. And when he had a show on MSNBC, I said the Democrats, and this was right before the election also, I said many of them, they're not built for this fight. They're not made for this moment. I'm going to repeat this. They're not built for this fight. And they're not made for this moment. I respect them for what they did, but that was the old fight. You can't use an old playbook for a new fight, right? You can't use civility when we're dealing with fascists who don't care about the rule of law. And when they're openly telling you on Meet the Press, due process, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. That's what Donald Trump said, right? When they're posting photos of themselves as a Sith Lord and as the Pope, and they're just trolling, right? When they're saying Constitution, I don't know if it's my job to uphold the Constitution. When they're quoting Hitler repeatedly, when they're quoting Napoleon, when they're just trolling you and telling you, I won't run again. Oh, maybe I will. Here's a hat. This is what we're dealing with, folks. And so I don't want a strongly worded letter. I don't want a stern talking point. I don't want Chuck Schumer to say, we're aroused. The American people are aroused. I want a fighter. Get in the ring and damn it, fight. And so you're seeing this fight play out with the David Hogg, who's young, who's Gen Z, saying, all right, as vice chair, I'm going to spend money, $20 million in primary, the old, not necessarily using as pejorative with age, but the old way thinking of Democrats. And you see James Carville coming out of the Louisiana swamps. And I have a quote where he called him a contemptible little twerp. He called Hogg he's a contemptible little twerp. What type of man is he? Look at his arms. He like, what did he do? What do you do? And then, James Carville said, just play possum. Play possum. That's an exact word. No, damn it. I want to see a fighter. Goes back to my 2 points now. The second point I want to bring up. Speaking about fighters, Jasmine Crockett. Jasmine Crockett, representative of Texas, has thrown her hat on the ring to be the head of the Oversight Committee. Now, let's step back a second, Julie, because I think what we're talking about, it all connects. When it came to deciding the leadership of the Oversight Committee, when it came to deciding the leadership of the communications director, right, the person who originally threw their hat on the ring, folks, was AOC. I would think, you know what? Having AOC as your Democratic head of oversight, that's a damn smart move. Can you tell people who the Democrats chose?
Well, listen, before we get to that, this is actually one of the first stuff, when I first joined Substack, this is one of the first columns I did. And I begged, let me stress again, I come from the Jerry Connolly wing of the Democratic Party originally. Who's the person that they ultimately chose, 75-year-old cancer-riddled Jerry Connolly. Now, Jerry Connolly is an effective member of Congress.
Yeah.
He's very accomplished. I am so sorry that he's sick. This
Yep.
is not in any way, shape, or form to denigrate his service or to denigrate his illness. However, these people tend to think that we are there for them and they're not here for us, right? And you saw that with Jim Clyburn today, another octogenarian, saying, well, what am I going to do? I mean, I can't leave this job, even though I'm really old, because I wouldn't know what to do with myself and I might die. Well, you know
You say
what?
that today?
Yeah, it's not up to you. Like, here's the thing. We're not here to keep you alive and to give you meaning. Like, that is not the job of the American taxpayer who's paying your salary. It is not the job of the Democratic voter to make sure that Jim Clyburn has something to do and doesn't have to play golf all day long when he's retired, right? It is their job to work for us. And the part that drives me crazy is that they had this golden opportunity with the woman who I think is the best messenger in the Democratic Party right now. You may not like her politics. You may not like her approach if you're Nancy Pelosi or you're a moderate. And by the way, from a purely policy perspective, I'm probably less in line with her than I would be with somebody like a Jerry Connolly. However, they are insane to be focusing on those issues right now when they should be focusing on who can take the fight to Donald Trump. Because from my perspective, there's only one thing going on right now. And you have to forget about whether Medicare for all is the right approach, whether the Green New Deal is the right approach, whether marginal tax rates should be raised or lowered. This is all, and I want people to listen to me because this is all that matters. You're either team democracy or you're team autocracy.
Absolutely.
And that is all that matters. And the person who is your best messenger and your best fighter on behalf of team democracy is the person who should be running this committee, which is the House Oversight Committee, which has the task of holding Donald Trump and all his minions to account. It is one of the very few things that Democrats have in their power to do in the minority. So they decide whether it's Hakeem Jeffries or Nancy Pelosi in leadership lean on the caucus to vote for Jerry Connolly because, we all know Jerry. Jerry's one of us. He's a good guy. And plus, Jerry's sick. He's owed this. No, Jerry Connolly was not owed
He's
this.
owed this. That's key. He's owed this.
He's not owed this. We're owed team democracy fighters. We're owed people who are in their fighting shape. And by the way, I know there are people here who are saying they're boomers and I'm being insulting to boomers. Listen, I'm not that. I'm 52 years old. Okay. I'm up there. And I'm saying this to you to say we need people who know how to fight. And if there's a boomer that knows how to fight, Nancy Pelosi is a good fighter, but she's not there anymore in leadership, right? Yet she's still pulling the strings on behalf of her friends. Her friends are not up to the task. She is, they're not.
And you're absolutely right. For those who don't know the story goes that Nancy Pelosi from her hospital bed whipped up the caucus to give the votes to Jerry Connolly over AOC because she's her friend and they're so afraid that AOC might be too left and like, oh no, Jerry Connolly's a steady ship. Jerry Connolly was 73 years old, had cancer, and they said, well, he's the guy. And Jerry Connolly, God bless him, very like Julie said, excellent representative. I wish him well. This man had 4,000 people on Instagram. I think AOC had 4 million. And
Yeah.
even going back to like last month, his aides still didn't teach him how to use the Zoom camera properly, folks. I'm not making this up. Go look at his interviews. They still haven't taught him and Schumer like how to use Zoom properly, how to aim the camera. And this is what we're dealing with, folks. Do your job, but speaking about Star Wars, right? I agree with you. You're either team democracy, team autocracy, part of the rebellion, or you're part of the empire, right? You're either light side of the force or a dark side of the force. You're either Jedi or Sith Lord. That's where it's at, folks. We're dealing with fascism. I use the fascism word. The water is warm at the left hook. I use authoritarianism. I use fascism.
You're
I
right.
use these words freely because this is, you need to use the language to describe the reality of today. Otherwise, what are we doing? We're just sanewashing it. So who is the one using the language? It's people like Jasmine Crockett, a fighter who gets up there willing to go toe to toe on CNN, on MSNBC, on Fox. She uses her cell phone. I've given this analogy, this example many times, Julie. I remember I saw her on MSNBC one time. She literally had her cell phone, much like you and I have right now. She was on her seat on her plane. The plane was about to take off in 10 minutes, and she's like, I'll make time, right? Like, so you need the people like that. So Crockett as oversight committee, this is going to be a really interesting tell whether or not the Democrats have learned from the past 3 months. They completely fumbled the ball, in my opinion, with Connolly and Debbie Dingell. You got the fighters, Jasmine Crockett and AOC. All right. So now the third story I want to ask you about. We talked about David Hogg versus Carville, Crockett versus the establishment to be the head of the oversight. So far, we're in line. I agree with you. The third story, AOC versus Schumer, 2028 potential, right? Politico a couple of weeks ago had this poll that I think you saw, where in a hypothetical matchup between AOC and Schumer says he wants to run, AOC literally won across the board, across all demographics. Across all demographics. Your take.
All right. I am a New York State voter. I live in New York City. This is me. This is my primary. For once in my life, I actually have some say in electoral politics because living in New York,
Yay.
you those of you who live in swing states have a lot more influence than I do. But I will say this. Ideologically, again, I'm probably more aligned with Schumer. You could not pay me to vote for Chuck Schumer if he were running against AOC. Because as I keep saying, it's not about policy. We'll start worrying about policy again when we have two normal parties. And then we can start talking about whether we have to raise or lower marginal tax rates. And we could talk about whether we expand healthcare, we expand the military, and all that bullshit. It's not bullshit, but all those policies that we spent decades and centuries debating. But right now, as I keep saying, it's a lot simpler than that. It is about who can take the fight and defeat, as you call them, the Sith Lord, the fascists, the dark side, whatever you want to call them. Team autocracy is what I call them, right? But it's about that. And Chuck Schumer has proven himself uniquely not up to the task. It's not even that he's bad at it. He's uniquely awful at it. She has proven herself to be uniquely good at it. It's not even a contest. And so, listen, if you're Chuck Schumer and you're losing somebody like me, you might as well give it up. Like, don't even bother running because I don't know who he thinks is going to vote for him. Because all the stuff that he's going to throw at her, she's too liberal, she's too this, he's going to try to mobilize the Jewish community, all the pro-Israel people. That's not what this election is going to be hinging on. That is not what this election is going to be hinging on. It is going to be hinging on whether you're able to stand up to the unique threat that Donald Trump and the MAGA movement pose to the United States and to our democracy, or you're not. She's equipped, he's not.
And speaking of Schumer, I think the latest poll came out that had him at a 19% favorability rating, which is like the lowest he's ever had. And AOC, regardless of your opinions about her, I don't know why we always have to qualify that because the other guy's Donald Trump, folks. If you think that she's like a little left on like Medicare for all or like Green Party, at least she believes in climate change. Donald Trump doesn't believe in climate change. That position alone should make anyone in the year 2025 be an extremist. Do you believe in climate change? I don't. You're an extremist. Bye. Thank you.
Let's go a step further. He doesn't believe in the Constitution, according to Meet the Press. He's not even sure if he should abide by the Constitution.
His own words.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. She believes in the Constitution. She voted for Kamala Harris. She supported Joe Biden. She's willing to be a team player, right? Who was the first people who went out for Joe Biden when he said, I'm going to put my hand in the ring? It was Bernie Sanders. It was black voters. It was AOC. When Kamala Harris threw in her hat, Who supported her, folks? Remember, it was black voters, AOC, and the progressives, right? Because they know how to build coalitions. So, speaking about coalition building, a multiracial coalition, race and class, bringing people together and messaging and saying, okay, how can we message effectively to bring all these disparate communities together? Aha, who's very unpopular? Elon Musk, who's very unpopular, the 1%. What do people agree on? Tax the rich. Let's take on the oligarchy or the broligarchy, right? And so you have our fourth topic. Bernie Sanders and AOC versus the oligarchy or the broligarchy, and then moderate from Michigan, Senator Elisa Slotkin. Elisa Slotkin was given the mantle, if you will, the microphone by the Democratic Party to respond to Donald Trump's, I don't even want to call it State of the Union, the State of the Disunion rant. Elisa Slotkin, do you all remember her? Of course you don't. Nothing inspiring, milk toast, Senator from Michigan, gave that response, no quotable quotes. All I remember is she praised Ronald Reagan. Then 2 weeks ago, she comes out and she says, this is my war plan. Elissa Slotkin's war plan was to stop being weak and woke and have that goddamn football energy, right? And meanwhile, she's criticizing Bernie Sanders and says regular folks don't understand the oligarchy. Meanwhile, Bernie and AOC are going to red districts and getting record crowds by talking about fighting the oligarchy. Elissa Slotkin, to me, folks, this is as clear as day, represents that, and I'm not using old as a pejorative, that old school centrists don't rock the boat. Let's use right wing talking points like woke to attack Democrats on our own base. We're afraid of our own shadow because our shadow's black. Let's try to win over Chet in the Rust Belt, even though for 10 years he has repeatedly told us he hates us. But this time, maybe this time we can win him over. And everyone else who's to the left of me is an extremist versus Bernie and AOC, regardless of what you think about them, folks. A lot of Trump voters said that they voted for AOC, and a lot of Trump voters said if Bernie was running, they would have voted for him. I've given you my framing. Slotkin versus Sanders. Your take.
Well, let me just say this quickly. This whole woke thing pisses me off to no end because it is such Republican framing and we keep fighting for it. Why in the world are we even talking about this? Because what is woke? Woke is what? That we're treating people who are transgender like human beings? Guilty as charged. Now let's move on and talk about things that people actually give a rat's ass about, right? Because all of this is fighting on their turf. And I hate when Democrats fall into that trap. And you see this constantly. I'm going to say this again. I'm going to use her actual fellow Michigander, Gretchen Whitmer. You saw what happened with Gretchen Whitmer this past week. Gretchen Whitmer decided she was going to welcome Donald Trump to Michigan, stand with him at a military base, because Donald Trump, by doing that, she thought, okay, I'm going to bring these jobs and these new jets to this military base in Michigan, and that's good for my constituents. Yeah, okay. It's good for her constituents for the second that Donald Trump agreed to do this. Now he's got her on a leash, and we'll see if those jets ever show up. You cannot deal with people like this. Again, imagine if you were in Germany in 1933, and this is not a far-off analogy. I'm not comparing him to Hitler because there's only one Adolf Hitler, and I'm an Eastern European Jew. I don't compare anybody to Hitler, but the paradigm is the same, right?
And you didn't call him Hitler. I didn't call him Hitler. It was his vice president, J.D. Vance. So maybe
right,
you take
called
him
him
as a
Hitler, right?
compliment.
But it's the same analogy where you're standing there in Germany in 1933. Do you kind of make common cause with these people because you think it's going to somehow get better? It will never get better for you. It will never get better for you. And I'll end with where I started. You got to fight these people. You have to fight them. And the reason that Bernie Sanders, who I voted against in 16, I voted against in 20, and I probably would have voted against in 24. But I realize now he was right about everything. And the reason that he was right about everything is not because of his policies. And again, I don't necessarily agree with all of his policies. It's because he knows how to speak to voters who we as the Democrats have left behind because we come across as ridiculous elitists. We focus group, and listen, I am a consultant. I have sat through more focus groups. Like I recite them in my sleep. I can tell you every statistic of every focus group going on right now, probably. But I will tell you right now, we have got to get out of our heads with respect to that. And we've got to start meeting people where they are. We've got to start talking to them, not in a focus group way, but authentically. And Bernie comes across as authentic, and AOC comes across as authentic, and Jasmine Crockett, whose views on all sorts of issues and policies I have no idea about. I don't know what she stands for, but she comes across as authentic. And God help me, Donald Trump comes across as authentic, right? We may not agree or disagree. We may agree or disagree with him, or we actually disagree with him. But despite the fact that we see through him, to his supporters, or to enough Americans, not just his supporters, he comes across as authentic. And Elisa Slotkin does not. She comes across as practiced. She comes across as focus grouped. Gretchen Whitmer comes across as focus grouped. And compare her to Janet Mills. Compared her to Janet Mills in Maine, who went to the White House. Trump says, we're going to screw you. And she said, bring it. Bring it
Yep.
on. You want
To his face.
To his face. Bring it. And she won. And she kicked his ass. And so that's what you're looking for. You're looking for people who have authenticity. And because people, listen, you started out by saying I worked at Fox. The one thing that Roger Ailes, who was a very complicated man, but the one thing that made him a complete genius when it came to television is he would always say the camera doesn't lie. You cannot be who you're not. The camera doesn't lie. And that applies to politics in the 30 years that I worked too. The camera doesn't lie. People can smell authenticity a mile away, and that's what they're looking for now. Not people who are trying to fit a square peg into a round hole, not people who are taking focus groups and trying to figure out how they can appeal, say one thing to you because you're, whatever particular age you are, man of color living in the Middle Atlantic, where you say something different to me because I'm a Gen Xer and I'm a woman and I'm white and I live in New York City. And like, you can't do that. People, we speak to each other, right? We don't live in silos. So they see the bullshit from a mile away. And so you have to be who you are. You have to be who you are. And maybe you're meeting the moment as to who you are, or maybe you're not meeting the moment as to who you are. But the reality is we're all who we are. And that's why AOC resonates. That's why Bernie resonates. That's why Crockett resonates. That's why Marjorie Taylor Greene resonates with the other side. She is who she is. And people take that at face value and they believe her because they think that she's telling them the truth because she truly believes it. And people understand that. And they understand that with people on our side as well.
Do I have you for a few more minutes,
You
Julie?
have as long as you want me.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks to the nearly 1,000 people joining us. I appreciate it. First time Julie and I are doing this. If you like this, let us know. I'd love to do this again with Julie if she'll tolerate me, if I'm tolerable. But I think it's a key thing. Let's bring in some receipts. You're talking about authenticity. You're talking about being a fighter. You're talking about like talking to people. And let's see what some Democrats have done. Gavin Newsom of my home state of California, on his podcast, folks, it was his podcast. He decides to invite Charlie Kirk, who is a MAGA brown shirt, and then Steve Bannon, and then he agrees with Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk doesn't bend the knee on any of his positions. What Gavin Newsom does is he veers to the right in order to court the MAGA base. What happens? His favorability rating goes down. Each and every single time Democrats try to be more tough than Republicans, does it help you win Republican voters? No, they still see you as weak. They call you a pedophile. They call you the enemy of the state. But what happens is you take the Overton window, what's acceptable, and you shift it what? To the right. When you start using words like woke as a pejorative, as James Carville has, as Rahm Emanuel has, as Elisa Slotkin has, congratulations, you are mainstreaming right-wing talking points that attack your base. So what we have seen is this very calculated strategy for the past 3 months by the Democratic establishment class, and I am using that now as a pejorative and not pointing at you, Julie. Oh, let's focus test this. Oh, we need to win over the centrists. Oh, we need to win over the young men. Let's be just like Joe Rogan. Let's be just like Theo Vaughn. Let's be just like Donald Trump. And then you're seeing other people say, how about we lead with values? How about we lead with conviction? And you saw Senator Van Hollen by himself go to El Salvador. He's the senator from Maryland, said, you know what? Kilmar Garcia is a resident of Maryland. I'm going to go there. It was a big risk, folks. He went by himself. He says, I ain't going to leave until I get proof of life. Gets proof of life. Kilmar Garcia is in the news. Trump administration is forced by the media to keep talking about it. They get tough questions. And now, immigration. The strong suit of Donald Trump, the one that Democrats never wanted to touch. We can appear weak on immigration. He's negative on immigration, folks. He's negative 21 on Kilmar Garcia. That shows you the fighting spirit. You fight, you message, you tell people about the oligarchy, the 1% versus the 99%, good guy versus bad guy. It's old school storytelling. And you unite a whole bunch of folks. And you get a whole bunch of people, rallying for you and a fighter who's authentic. You might not agree with most things. You might think, they're too left, they're too right. I got really offended. But I think you're right, Julie. People want authenticity, especially compared to the con man that is Trump. And they want a fighter to punch this mother effing bully in the face. And this gets me to the final thing I want to talk about. I said 5 topics. I'm going to honor my word. John Fetterman. Many of us have been seeing what happened to Fetterman, right? Fetterman came off as this progressive fighter in a swing state, unorthodox. He had a stroke, got sick, and then ever since assuming power, just did almost a 180. Regardless of where you stand on Israel and Palestine, I mean, I hope people stand for a ceasefire. What's happening is it's just utmost cruelty and barbarity, especially this week. But the way he has bear hugged Netanyahu, mocked and ridiculed Palestinians, mocked and ridiculed the base, right? Like bear hug to the right. People are like, what's happening to him? And you saw aides just like walking away. And people are like, something's happening here. A devastating New York Magazine profile came out last week, Julie, which, my God, this man seems completely unfit, unwell. The fact that the reporter got so many former aides on the record, he's forgetful. He abruptly left his child's birthday to go visit like the grave of a friend. He seems unusually cruel, just kind of has highs and lows. And they're saying that this person clearly is not capable to do his job. But Democrats now are saddled with Fetterman because, well, he's a senator from Pennsylvania. What to do about Fetterman?
So, how funny that you say this. I actually did a Substack live yesterday called How Do You Solve a Problem, like John Fetterman, because of everything you just said. And I'm going to come at this from a position of empathy because I have people in my family who have mental illness, as I am positive we all do.
Yeah.
He's deeply troubled. He's got serious, it sounds to me, I'm not a psychiatrist, I don't want to diagnose anybody, but it sounds to me that he has serious issues with either bipolarity or whatever is going on with him. I think it would be better for John Fetterman to either take a very, very, very long break and get the help that he needs, or to step down. And if we have to have a special election, I'm not sure what the Pennsylvania state law says, whether the governor, who by the way is a Democrat, gets to appoint, or whether there's an election. But regardless of what it is, if there's an election, we'll win it because Donald Trump's president. If the governor gets to appoint because there's a vacancy, then God bless Josh Shapiro's Democrat. We'll have that seat anyway. John Fetterman clearly has issues that he has to worry about that are 100% more important for him than whether he stays in the Senate or not, or really even whether Democrats have that extra vote or not. First of all, it sounds to me like he is not the person. I gave money. Listen, I worked in politics for so long that I don't give money to most politicians that I know or work with because I kind of know how the sausage is made and I don't want to spend my money making it. But I did to John Fetterman. When he ran against Connor Lamb, I was so captivated by him. He came to New York, he and Giselle, his wife, to some random bar somewhere in I can't remember where it was, somewhere downtown in the city. And my husband and I went. We actually went because we wanted to meet him. And it was in some basement, dingy bar. And we met him and we loved him. And I wrote him a check. And I think my husband did too. And we met Giselle. And so we were like bought in on John Fetterman. And what I was so bought in on John Fetterman about was that he kept assuring us that he was not going to be Joe Manchin, that he was not going to be a Kirsten Sinema, that he was going to be the kind of guy who was going to be that solid 51st vote, right?
Yeah.
For the majority. And of course, he turned into Joe Manchin within a year or two of being there. And you can blame that on the stroke he had, and maybe that affected him. You can blame that on the fact that he saw Pennsylvania by a smidgen go for Trump, and therefore he decided he had to move way to the right to win Pennsylvania, which is absurd. Absurd. Beyond absurd, especially in this day and age when there's no way. Especially with what's going on now, where you saw him voting for Pam Bondi, where you saw that article, that New York Magazine article, say that he debated voting for Pete Hegseth and like went through this whole, moral dilemma about whether he should vote for Pete Hegseth. I mean, really, after everything we know about Pete Hegseth, he was going to actually vote for him potentially. So, and then the whole Israel-Palestine thing, which again, listen, you could be as pro-Israel as you want. If you want to hug Bibi Netanyahu, I don't recommend it, but you want to do that, you're a senator, that's the position you've made, that's fine. But where he has gone so incredibly personally cruel on
That's
Muslims, right? Like in a kind of dehumanizing way. I don't care if you think that Hamas controls every single Palestinian in the Gaza Strip, which they don't. I don't care if you think Bibi Netanyahu walks on water, which he doesn't, but let's assume you believe both those things. You cannot use dehumanizing language against human beings the way he has about Muslims living in the Gaza Strip, about Palestinians living in the Gaza Strip. You cannot do that. And all of that just says to me that there's some chip missing that he needs to have addressed. He needs to have fixed. It's clear that his wife is concerned about him. It's clear that his staff was leaking not because they wanted to embarrass him, but because it was an intervention. And
Yep.
apparently nothing else worked. And I think they thought maybe if they went public, maybe that would work. And I've been a part of two interventions in my life. It's incredibly hard. And I understand what they were trying to do. So I don't blame them at all for doing it. I think they're getting a rash of crap for it that they shouldn't be. He needs help. He really, really, really needs help. And every time his spokesperson comes out and says, no, he was okay, now he's okay, and this is all people trying to get him, he's not okay.
Nope.
He's not okay. If you act the way you're acting, if you're isolating yourself, if you're not going to committee hearings, if you're not in caucus meetings, if you're not making votes, and he skipped more votes than anybody else in the last 6 months, if that's happening in your life, you're depressed and you're not doing the job for which you are being paid. And by the way, I will say this again. We don't owe John Fetterman that job.
No.
We don't owe him that position. If he can't do the job, if he won't vote, if he won't go to meetings, if he won't go to caucus luncheons, if he won't participate in the life of the Senate the way that he's being paid to, then he needs to get out of the way and have somebody else do that. In the same way that any, nonagenarian senator, member of Congress who is skipping vote after vote after vote because they're sick or they're in a nursing home, as Kay Granger was in Texas on the Republican side, you're not owed this job. We're paying for it. So please, please, for your own sake, Senator Fetterman, address your issues because they're physical and they're obviously mental and they need to be addressed before he
Very
harms
well.
himself or somebody else.
Very well stated. And I would say, John Fetterman, if anyone who's watching who knows him, his family, his friends, his aides, it's an intervention time, and you have to ask him to resign for his own mental health, if not for the state of our democracy right now, which is faltering. For his sake, this man is clearly unwell and has done a complete 180 on who he was. And that New York Magazine profile, I recommend everyone reading. It's a damning, sad, almost infuriating, but also tragic profile of a man who seems completely broken and no one's able to rein him in. Sadly, though, he is a senator of the United States of America. His vote counts. And so please, anyone, come in and intervene with John Fetterman. Laying my cards on the table as we wrap this up, folks, I guess you would say I'm more progressive than Julie. But to be fair, for those who are watching my show for the first time or seeing me for the first time coming from Julie's excellent Substack, Salty Politics, hi. I told people that the lesser of two evils, if you want to frame it that way, is always preferable to evil. So people who said we can't vote for Kamala Harris or Joe Biden, the genocide in Israel, establishment, I said, folks, there's no both sides when it comes to Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. No both sides. I have my criticisms. Vote for the lesser of two evils. Exactly that, because we would not be in a constitutional crisis. So I told everybody, vote for Kamala Harris. I got a bunch of heat from folks. How can you tell us to vote? Because I said, I know what's going to happen with Donald Trump. I've been writing about him, reporting on him for 10 years. I'm not surprised or shocked at all because he's doing exactly what he said he would, people. Take him literally and take him seriously. Now we're in it. 3 months in. In fact, it's been 3.5 months and people are already having their regrets. And I've had so many people come up to me and say, "Wow, did you know this would happen?" I said, "Yes, I sent you my article." They're like, "Oh shit, you were right." But we were taken in by the trans panic. And so many people, right? And so now we're all in it, folks. What's done is done. We are all in it. Okay. This is an all hands on deck moment against fascism, right? This is all hands on deck moment against authoritarianism. And as Julie said, if you don't believe me, listen to Donald Trump and his own interview with Christine Walker on Meet the Press just yesterday. He is telling you, he is showing you, he wants to reopen Alcatraz and make it into a prison for the worst of the worst. Who's the worst of the worst? People like me and Julie.
Us.
Yeah, the press, judges, brown immigrants, legal immigrants, students, people who are engaging in a thought crime that Marco Rubio doesn't like, even white conservative, straight Republican men like Chris Krebs and Miles Taylor for dare-defying Donald Trump. He signed an executive order having them potentially investigated for treason. If they go after Miles Taylor and Chris Krebs and Mike Pence, folks, you think you'll be safe? All right. No. Julie is a Jewish American immigrant. I am the son of Pakistani immigrants and a practicing Muslim. Think about it. When people said, oh, they'll just go after the LGBTQ, I'll be fine. Oh, they'll just go after the undocumented, I'll be fine. They'll go after the pro-Palestinian activists, I'll be fine. Do you feel safe, everyone? Do you feel like you'll be fine? No one is safe. Exactly right. Thanks so much for the comments, by the way. So we're in it, folks, and we need a Democratic Party that has fighters. We need a Democratic Party that is willing to listen to people, to meet the moment, that is willing to adapt, to evolve. And we need a Democratic Party that is willing to punch a bully figuratively in the face. And if that means some toes are stepped on, people's feelings are hurt, Clyburn doesn't know what to do with his free time, John Fetterman might have to retire and get mental help, so be it. And the last thing I'll say is I have never been in my career, Julie. I see politicians as tools. I always have. They're tools of the people. You are a tool that I use to advance the greater good for the humanity. If you are a useful tool, you will be rewarded. You will be sharpened. You will be elevated. If you are not, you will be replaced. They're just a lever to pull. I do not bend the knee to any politician, Julie. So in this moment of vacancy, anyone, if it's Bernie, AOC, Crockett, Hogg, I don't care. Anyone who's willing to step up and fight for the people with authenticity, Julie, I'm like, you showed me. I'm with you.
Bring it, and I'll tell you right now, even the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which is by far the most devastating, people are so divided on it, it's insane, especially in the Democratic Party. Even that, whatever your views on it are, you have to put aside because democracy is at stake in this country. And to people, when you talk about authenticity, Waj, and you're talking about what people missed, that's where I think Kamala and Biden both screwed up. They tried to have it both ways on that issue. And what ended up happening? She got fewer Jewish votes than anybody has in recent memory, and she lost Michigan. And specifically lost parts of the Palestinian parts of Michigan to Donald Trump. I mean, think about that. The guy who wants to basically, make Mara Gaza into a real thing. So you can't be a grape in this day and age. If anything, if this 2024 election taught us anything on the hardest issues, and the hardest issue of the last cycle was by far the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the issue that divided the Democratic base more than any other. Even there, pick a side. And I was meeting with this member of Congress, this congresswoman, just if you have a few seconds, a few months ago.
No, please.
And she has a very sizable Muslim community. She's a very sizable Jewish community. And they do not obviously agree on this issue. And she said to me, I don't know what to do. And I said, where is your heart on this? What do you believe? And she said, I am very pro-Palestinian. I think what's going on there is awful. And I said, if you had said to me that you're pro-Israeli, I would have given you the exact same advice that I'm giving you right now as you're saying you're pro-Palestinian. Embrace it. And don't try to have it both ways. Because people on both sides will appreciate that you're being authentic and sincere about where you are. You can agree to disagree on it, but they will appreciate that you're being sincere, and they'll appreciate that you're being authentic about a very difficult issue if you truly feel strongly about it. And that's what you need. And that's what Biden didn't do, and that's what Harris didn't do, and that's why they lost both sides on this particular
And they lost progressive voters and young voters. And folks, I want to remind you that the bar was so low. I'm speaking on behalf of Muslim communities and Arab communities, even though it wasn't just Muslims, Arabs, and Palestinians. Like I said, a lot of Democratic voters, old voters, white voters, progressive voters. If you look at all the polls, they said the inaction of Biden and Kamala, which has in part enabled this horrific, my words, amnesty's words, genocide, what's happening right now, folks, I think it is inexcusable. It is barbaric what's happening. Look at New York Times yesterday. It's a preventable, they said, catastrophe, what's happening in Gaza. And people said, well, what's worse than genocide, between Kamala and Trump? I said, genocide plus. because what Trump would do would be far worse, and what he's doing is far worse, right?
It is far worse because now, like all boundaries are up. All boundaries
Yeah,
are up.
and also domestically. Look at not just foreign, but also domestically. Because now, if you saw what Israel's saying, is like, all right, you want to make it the Riviera of the Middle East? Great. You want to open ethnic cleansing? Awesome. That would not have happened with Kamala Harris, nor would Mahmoud Khalil or Rameza Ostrich been kidnapped in broad daylight and detained thousands of
Bingo.
miles away. Not boatloads, plane loads of innocent brown immigrants sent to die in a foreign gulag. A president saying, "Oh, I don't know if I have to, do I have to follow the Constitution?" So I always tell people that when I said the lesser of two evils, folks, that's what I was talking about because I knew so many Democratic voters who said, "I can't, I just can't, it's genocide, I can't." And I'm like, it'll be worse with Trump. Everything will be worse. And so many people, whether it was due to misinformation, let's be honest, tax cuts, greed, whether it was due to divide and conquer, where like, we want to go after the undocumented, whether it was due to, let's be honest, folks, the 200 million spent on anti-trans ads, where all these parents in the suburbs I talked to who are Democratic voters said, but my child, he might be trans. They might make him trans. I'm like, are they trans? No, but we have to punish them. Folks, all of them are now coming back to me and saying, whoopsie, you were right. So here we are, folks, and Democrats need to learn because the problem that Democrats have made, Julie, and I hope they learn from this, is, like you said, they tried to win everyone. They tried to be milk toast,
Can't have it
vanilla.
both ways. Can't
And
have it
what
both
happened,
ways.
right? Nothing. They motivated nothing. They tried to be like this wet, cold piece of bread. And who respects a wet, cold piece of bread? Someone who has no taste buds, right? You have to come out and you have to fight and you have to like be authentic and you have to, stand for your base. And folks, I know Democrats hate knowing this, the old school establishment. I said this before, I'll say it again. Democrats hate their own shadow because their shadow is black. The base is black women.
Oh,
The
yes, it
base,
is.
it's people of
Yep.
color. It's children of immigrants. It's women. It's educated folks. It's LGBTQ. It's Muslims. You have to embrace them the way MAGA embraces all the nuts. And if you kick them in the face and say, shut your mouth, you shut your mouth, you better vote for us or else. It's either us or Trump. What are you going to do? You saw in 2024, Julie, people said, I'm going to stay home.
Hey, listen, when Barack Obama went and lectured black men and told them, you better do this or else, you know what my attitude would have been if I were a black man or a black woman for that matter, especially black women? We have been the backbones. No Democrat, I don't know if people know this, no Democrat has won the presidency with a majority of the white vote since Lyndon Johnson in 1964.
Yep.
Not in my lifetime, not in your lifetime. It has always been with the help of and the majority of people of color, because it's really black women who are, as you said, are the backbone of the Democratic Party. And the part that I don't understand is that they're always being asked to do more and more and more and more. And yet we're sitting here, as Elisa Slotkin is, trying to chase this magical MAGA voter sitting in some trailer park somewhere in Michigan that's going to magically wake up and say, you know what, I was wrong about Donald Trump all this time. I'm going to go and vote for you. Like, no, we're not getting those people back. And if they are going to come
Julie,
back
it's
to us,
been
it's because
10 years. It's been 10
been
years they've
years.
been chasing this mythical Rust Belt
But,
voter named
but,
Chet.
right, exactly. But if you're a black woman, you keep going to the Democratic Party and they keep coming to your well over and over and over again and then being taken totally for granted. So maybe this year, if you're a black, it didn't happen as much with black women, but it certainly did with black men. I think they were trying to send a message. And you know what? Democrats should have listened. They
That's
should
right.
have listened. And I
That's it.
don't know that they are listening. That's the problem, because I will tell you, black men are looking for exactly the same thing that Latino men who were losing are and Latino women who were losing are. And frankly, that Chet sitting in the trailer park probably is too, which is, I just want somebody to level with me about what you're going to do to make my life better. And the way
That's
to
it.
make their lives better is exactly the same way you make Chet's life better. Everybody wants a job. Everybody wants to be able to afford to take their kids to Disney once in a while. Everybody wants to be able to maybe send their kids to college. Everybody wants to be able to afford to take a vacation at the beach for a week one summer. And the problem is that we don't do that. We try to segment and segment and segment and segment, and we say to you what you want to hear. as a Muslim man, and we say something different to me, as I said before, as a Jewish woman, and we say something different to a Black woman, and we say something different to, the pygmy living, who immigrated here from Botswana, like whatever. The point is that we can't do this anymore because Donald Trump had a great and brilliant message. He was going to make America great again, and every single cohort could project what that meant in their own way onto that.
Obama did that too, folks. Obama
Oh,
did
yeah,
that.
hope
Hope
and
and
change.
change. Etch a sketch, whatever you want hope and change to mean. And it was his face, a son of a biracial
Yeah,
couple, born in America, raised abroad, that showed the vision and promise of a multiracial America. It was brilliant. It was authentic, whereas Donald Trump is a bullshit artist, but nonetheless, it was the performance and the message. You
yeah.
project onto it what it means to you. And folks, I just want to give an example because I know a lot of people within the Democratic Party, progressives, say we got to go moderate. I don't know what that means. Moderate oftentimes means white and centrist. It has never worked. But I want to give you an example of Andy Bashir. Andy Bashir is the governor of Kentucky, white Christian man who is the governor, the Democratic governor of Kentucky, Ruby Red Kentucky. Andy Bashir has run on a platform that empowers and uplifts the marginalized LGBTQ community. He did not throw them under the bus. Even after the election, he wrote an op-ed in the New York Times talking about, no, even though, we might have difference of opinions, we cannot scapegoat them and harm them. He also did something where he didn't throw women's rights under the bus or Roe v. Wade under the bus. You see Tim Walz, centrist, Hunter. There's a lot of white folks in Minnesota, runs progressive politics with a narrow margin, very popular, right? Maxwell Frost in Florida,
Yeah.
he said, "Hey, folks, you voted for Trump. All right, you made a mistake. Come join us. Let's go against the 1%." Right? So I feel like there's a message here where it doesn't matter if you're white, if you're boomer, if you're older. Someone had a really good point that
Mhm.
said, Bernie's above the age of 80. Yeah, it's not the age, it's the mindset, and that old mindset. I'm talking about old, not as pejorative, but old as in centrist, milk toast, weak, limp, not going to fight. Go towards the middle, whatever you think the middle is. Go towards whiteness, whatever you think whiteness is. Use Republican talking points against your own base and somehow shame people into voting for you. Has it worked for the past 10 years? That's the last thing I want to say.
Yeah.
Julie, I kept you longer, but final word to you.
Well, I agree with everything you said. And again, notice how you and I did not debate policy. Notice how you and I did not debate any of these issues that people in Washington think that people should sit around and debate. Because as we've said before, you're either, as you said, the Sith Lord or a Jedi. As I say, team democracy or team autocracy. Nothing else matters. I want to keep reiterating that. And everything else will be resolved once we eradicate this cancer from our body politic, which is that we have one Democratic with a small d party and one authoritarian party, and they cannot coexist in this country. You cannot have it coexist. So either the democracy will win or the autocracy will win. We have to get together on that. Everything else is secondary. Just that's it. That's all there is to it. And in terms of authenticity, pick your poison and stick to it. We all have views on everything. Just whatever it is, stick to it.
And
And
you lose some folks. Look, I lose some folks, and I
you
made
lose
this
folks.
decision.
That's okay.
And I want to, I was thinking about this, Julie, because we didn't have any notes beforehand. I said, Julie, I
Yeah,
have these thoughts, and we jumped into the water together. And so far, 1,200 people have joined us. Thanks, all. What I said is, listen, it's impossible. It is impossible for me and Julie to agree on everything. It is impossible for you and another Democratic voter to agree on it. Impossible. I'm a Muslim. I believe in God. I meet Democrats all the time and say, you're an idiot. How can you believe in God? You're a grown ass educated man. All right. Now I can use that and be like, you and me loggerheads together, but I'm against fascism. Are you against fascism? Great. Let's join forces, right? There are a lot of folks who think Islam is stupid and they don't like Muslims, which, there's 1.8 billion of us. So we're pretty delicious people. Get to know us. But they came out and they said the Muslim ban is terrible. So if all the people came out against the Muslim ban in the first Trump administration, I was not stupid enough to think that all those people are Muslim are going to convert to Islam, right? But what they said was, we are coming out because we are morally opposed to this. And we know that if the Trump administration goes after Muslims, they're going to go after our community next. I'll stand with you. You stand with us. That's what we have to do right now, folks, right? This is like, and I want to give this example because I got this Millennium Falcon behind me. I just wrote a piece on Donald Trump co-opting Star Wars. Which, by the way, people joke about it. I don't, because it's a fascist playbook. Read that piece if you can. Especially if you're a Star Wars fan, I promise I make it connect. I connect the dots. I make it make sense, even not a Star Wars fan. But there's a series right now, Julie, called Andor. And in this series that's right now it's happening,
Yep.
it's a great critically acclaimed series. It's about how the rest of the people in the Star Wars universe unite against the Empire, fascism. None of the characters in Andor have any superpowers. There's no lightsabers, there's no Yoda, there's no Luke Skywalker, there's no Millennium Falcon. They're just average Joes. And the lead character, folks, in the first season, he is like, all right, life sucks. The Empire always wins. I'm going to get my money. I'm going to take care of myself. He gets his money. He retires to like that version of Florida. And he's like, F you all, I'm selfish. And he's chilling. And even then, folks, he happens to be brown at the wrong place at the wrong time. He gets picked up and sent to prison, a foreign gulag. And he finds out he'll never escape and he gets radicalized. And he comes out and joins the resistance. Why am I mentioning that, Julie? It's because for all of those who think that it won't impact you, it will. And
Oh,
I
it will.
believe, Julie, all of us have a superpower and everyone can do something, even at a local level. And so I've kept you for 30 minutes longer than I would, but I want you to give people, if you can, my final question to you, some concrete, tangible action items or even a mindset that they can leave with because they're so exhausted, so overwhelmed. We're stuck in this for 3.5 more years at least. What can people walk away with and say, damn it, I'm not going to be an apathetic milquetoast Democrat like Schumer and others. I want to fight. What can people do?
All right, listen, first of all, keep your eye on the prize, right? He's going to throw a bunch of bullshit at you, starting with his meme, with dressing up as the Pope. That's to distract us. Yes, it's offensive. Yes, if you're Catholic, it's really offensive. He's going to throw this whole lightsaber thing, which by the way was red. I love that. They couldn't even get the color right. But they're going to
Sith
throw,
Lord, not a Jedi.
yeah,
Sith Lord.
yeah, exactly. They're going to throw that at you. Don't get distracted. There's a lot of shit they're going to just throw at you to get you distracted. Understand this is an existential battle for the soul of this party and the soul of this government and the soul of this country. It's not even about the Democratic Party. It's not even about our government. It's actually our country that's at stake here. And I will tell you, to your point, and listen, I will give you some personal, an example from my life. My great grandfather was in the Soviet Union, a very early Bolshevik, close
Mm,
to Lenin, close to Trotsky, came in with the Russian Revolution. I don't even know what he did, and God knows I don't want to know what he did. But the point is, one of those early revolutionaries. Eventually, because the revolution always comes for everybody,
yep.
Stalin, his old colleague, he hated Stalin, but they all worked together, came for him. He was arrested one night. He was executed along with a lot of other people who were part of the revolution. It doesn't end with the Muslim guy, Colombia, who gets arrested. It doesn't end with a trans person who gets dehumanized. It doesn't end with people who don't look like you. Eventually, it comes for you. Eventually, it will come for parts of MAGA because guys like Trump will always escalate. Always, always, always. They will never think it's good enough. People are not loyal enough. Nobody's ever secure enough. The paranoia is going to keep kicking in. And a lot of the people, like Mike Pence, who were complete sycophants to him until one day they didn't do just enough for him. And that's going to happen again and again and again and again. So people need to understand this is an existential fight. However you do it. We talk about it. We're on Substack. I have a nonprofit that I run that deals with a lot of issues that Trump probably doesn't agree with. Everybody, I try to elect Democrats in my career. We all have ways to fight. You could go to a protest.
Mm,
You can just read what we write. You don't have to actually do anything, but just as long as you're aware of what's happening, talk to your friends, talk to your neighbors, talk to your kids. The reality is you have more credibility with those people than we do because you know them. And so the key here is just spread the word. You have to spread the word that it's a zero sum game, folks. It really is a zero sum game. You may agree with me on some stuff. You may agree with Waj on some stuff. You may disagree with us on a lot of stuff, but I think we could all agree that we're on the same team here. And the rest of it will resolve itself. But we have to win this particular battle, which means we have to stop these forces of autocracy for taking over our government, however you choose to do that in your own way. I don't know your life. I don't know what you do. However you do it, do it. Write a letter to the editor, write your congressman, write your senator, go to a town hall, go to a protest, go stand at the sidelines of the Little League practice and go talk to fellow parents about what's going on, whatever it takes. Just please do it because so much is at stake. We have to defeat this. If we don't defeat this, we're not going to have a country anymore. I don't know where you're going. I truly don't. I can't go back to Russia, so I don't know where where are we going to go? This is the only country we have. We've got to stay here. We've got to fight. We've got to win.
That's it. Amen. And folks, it's the 50-51 protests, the hands-off protests. They're growing. Look at what happened in Wisconsin. People thought, oh, there's no way Elon Musk has given $20 million. And look, the people came out and the Republican sycophant MAGA judge lost by double-digit points. Folks, don't underestimate the power of the people, right? That's what we have. They don't have the numbers. The fascists don't have the numbers. But like that one bully, right? The one bully comes in, picks on the weakest kid, and he depends on everyone else bending the knee, right? That's what they do. But if everyone else just stands up and says, no, I'm going to fight back, courage like hope becomes contagious and it spreads. So that's what I want people to take away, right? Courage and hope are contagious. You need fighters. Stand up, do what you can, be informed. And with that, Julie, can you shamelessly promote yourself? How can people read you? How can people support you?
Yes, thank you. So I appreciate that. So you can find me on Substack at Salty Politics. I write every day for the most part. I do these lives all the time. I have a show on Wednesdays with Tara Setmayer, who I know was on your show not too long ago, or
Oh,
did I
great.
live with you? Jojo from Jurors and I and Michelle Kinney do a show every Wednesday at noon called Oversight, which you can find on YouTube. We also do Coffee and Conversations Saturday mornings at 10, uh, where we talk about just the week. So you guys can find us across all of those platforms on YouTube and on Substack. You can follow me on Blue Sky. You could try to follow me on Twitter. I'm not there much anymore because it's a hellhole and a dystopian hellscape, but I'm there occasionally. And I'm around. So just add Julie Roginsky at all those handles and Salty Politics and Substack. And thank you so much for having me. This was such a great conversation. I really, really appreciate
Now,
it.
I was supposed to keep Julie for 30 minutes. I kept her for an hour and 5 minutes. I apologize.
I'm
For
here
those who are
anytime.
joining from Julie's Salty Politics, this is The Left Hook. It's theleft.substack.com. I am a fool, not an idiot. My immigrant parents are so sad because I've kept everything for free. So they're like, why, beta, why? And I'm like, democracy dies in darkness. Remember that? Remember I used to say that? So I don't believe in paywalls. I understand some people do. Pay what you can. It's theleft.substack.com. I also co-host the Democracy-ish podcast with Danielle Moody, my fabulous co-host, Monday, Friday, 12 p.m. Eastern. You can also see me on Mary Trump's Nerd Avengers. We're on Mary Trump's channel tomorrow at 12 p.m. Eastern time. If y'all enjoyed this, let us know. I'm going to get Julie back, or maybe I could join her for Salty Politics.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you all, folks. As always, be kind, be good, take care of each other, take care of yourself, and please, oh please, don't be a fascist. Take care. Bye, Julie. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks for having me.